The Florida Gators are going to have a lot of blue chips on campus this weekend.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Wednesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. And like I said, the Florida Gators are going to have a lot of blue chips on campus this weekend. They were expected to have another blue chip on campus, but quarterback Keelan Russell, who was scheduled to take an official visit to Florida this weekend, will no longer take that visit anymore. Keelan Russell, of course, was formerly committed to SMU, and him committing to SMU early kind of felt like a weird situation, but I guess it was, hey, lock my spot in here, and I could always flip, which took a visit to Alabama this past weekend. And yesterday, early evening, late afternoon, announced his decision to flip from SMU to Alabama. And then about 20 minutes later, which when he announced the flip, it was kind of expected, you're not going to take an official visit to a different school this same week. But about 20 minutes later, it was officially announced that, yep, not taking that official visit to Florida anymore. That's fine. Personally, I feel like I've said this before. Keelan Russell isn't someone that I thought Florida would land anyway. And for Florida, landing a 2025 QB that's a blue chip is probably going to be a tough selling point at this point, with DJ Lagway from the 2024 class on campus right now, and Will Griffin as a blue chip in the 2026 class. A lot of competition in that quarterback room. So I'd expect to go a high 3-star, maybe low 4-star, at least one quarterback in this class still, though. Then talking about the kids that are actually going to visit campus, no running back. Receivers, Caleb Cunningham is a 5-star receiver that Florida is going to be competing with Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss in this one. It's really down to these 5 schools, obviously including Florida in there. I am expecting Caleb Cunningham to be an Auburn Tiger. That's just where I stand on that. And things could change. This seems to be a pretty fluid recruitment. There's a lot of variation, a lot of variance here, I guess we'll say, between what school is leading, and usually it's the school that's taken the most recent visit, which for Caleb Cunningham was Auburn this past weekend. But something about this, I feel like the whole time we've talked about Caleb Cunningham, which has been over a year at this point that we first had a conversation about him, and it was, hey, Florida's not really in it, and then a few months ago, Florida kind of got into it. I think right now, I feel like the whole time, Auburn's been a team that I've thought of as they're pushing hard, they're in the lead, or they're near the top if they're not at the top. So I do think Caleb Cunningham winds up at Auburn. Ole Miss is another school that I think has a very realistic chance. And of course, Florida has a realistic chance with every player that we talk about that's going for an official visit. Florida has a realistic chance for. Okay, I just want to throw that one out there. I know I'm not super optimistic about actually landing Caleb Cunningham, but we're 6 months from early signing day. If you're coming in for an official visit, it's not just to play patty cake. Like, you're actually considering Florida. And again, you impress on these official visits, which Florida has been able to do, you're probably going to make some waves at some point. Another wide receiver on campus is going to be Cortez Mills, 4-star. I think that this one ultimately comes down to Florida or Miami. Again, I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And this is probably going to be one where we're going back and forth, where even if he makes a summer commitment, Florida and Miami, again, are the 2 schools that I think are most likely landing spots. They play each other to start the year. So you're a couple of months away from them playing. So even if you do commit at some point, maybe the team that wins gets an extra leg up there. However, Cortez Mills did this past weekend take an official visit to Clemson. And next weekend, he has an official visit with Oklahoma. Again, I still think that right now this comes down to Florida and Miami. Maybe one of those schools gets more into it, but right now those are my top two thinking for Cortez Mills. Tight end, you got Andrew Olesh, who 4-star right now is on the On3 composite, the number 5 tight end. I believe he's listed as 3, 4, 5, and I think 10th by Rivals, but 3, 4, and 5 by 24/7 On3 and ESPN. He took an official visit to Alabama this past weekend. That afterward, he said, "Hey, like it went great. It went better than I expected it to go. It was really fun." I personally think that he winds up at Penn State. I do think that Tayshawn Gelsey and Micah Jones, who were on campus last week, are the two most likely commits at tight end for Florida in the 2025 class. Again, I think Andrew Olesh winds up at Penn State. He's taking a lot of visits there, has an official visit there. Obviously, he's in Gainesville this weekend, but has an official visit with Penn State next weekend, and then Michigan after that. Probably going to be one of those two schools. Tight end Hollis Davidson is also going to be on campus. He's a 3-star, so Andrew Olesh 4-star, Hollis Davidson 3-star. I believe both Micah Jones and Tayshawn Gelsey, who were on campus last week, are 3-stars as well. Davidson was initially committed to Auburn, decommitted in early mid-May-ish, about a month ago. As Florida this week, Florida State on June 21st. To my knowledge, those are his only 2 official visits scheduled right now. So Hollis Davidson could commit to either of those schools. It'll also depend on when Tayshawn Gelsey and Micah Jones actually announce their decisions, because who knows, maybe one of them announces first. Hollis Davidson wants to secure his spot in the class, and he commits. Could be either way. So we'll see as far as how that goes. But right now, it looks like a Florida State battle. You have on the offensive line, there's 4 offensive linemen on campus this weekend. Solomon Thomas, 5-star, Florida State commit. Florida had Florida State commit Javian Hilson on campus last week. So I guess Billy Napier was like, hey, I'll spin around your block and then I'll spin around your block again. So I guess that's his approach to it. Solomon Thomas is obviously a priority for Florida, and he will be until he signs somewhere else. I do not care about where he commits or where he remains committed to. He will be a priority for Florida until he signs with another program. Took an official visit to LSU this past weekend, so they could be in contention there. They've got a lot of high-power players on offense committed for the 2025 class, but I do think Solomon Thomas will be a Florida Gator at the end of the day, but it's probably going to be Florida or Florida State. Then you have Micah DeBose, 4-star, former Georgia commit, was at LSU this past weekend, also has Alabama coming up in a couple of weeks. I feel like Micah DeBose is going to pick Alabama at this point, but again, you've got 2 official visits currently scheduled. Florida's one of them. You got to feel like you've at least got a shot there. There's offensive lineman John Mills, who's a 3-star, is a priority for Florida. One of the top targets for this offensive line class, or one of the top value targets for this offensive line class for Florida. Probably going to commit this summer. I think Florida's done a pretty good job of positioning themselves here. I do think it's going to be a bit tough to beat Texas. That one's going to be a little bit difficult there. He's got Florida this weekend, has Texas in next weekend, and then he's going to be done with official visits, take a week or 2 before making an announcement. He's also already visited officially Washington, California, and Nebraska. So you've got all those visits done. It's going to be one of those 5 schools. I think it's Florida or Texas. More likely Texas than Florida, but we'll see at that point. Also have offensive lineman Taryn Hedrick on campus this weekend. Another 3-star. Still has official visits scheduled with Texas A&M, Purdue, and Kentucky in addition to Florida. I think Florida's in the lead right now, and I do think it's unlikely but possible that the Florida Gators can get Taryn Hedrick to kind of commit this weekend and make a decision and come to a decision there. We are about to talk about the defensive recruits that are going to be on campus, which there's lots of them, but does not mean they're any less valuable. I'm just saying. But first, a quick word from Game Time. Game Time makes getting tickets to the NBA Finals even faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to tip-off. So I'm just saying the NBA Finals, they start tomorrow night. If you're in either area for either game, maybe you swing it. Just saying. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Don't forget the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets, and the lowest price guarantee is a really fun one because that's saying that, hey, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less than what you paid on Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Just saying. So you are getting literally the lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with the Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. We're talking about the defensive recruits that are going to be on campus this weekend, officially visiting the Florida Gators again. Both of these lists are subject to change. You know, someone could have a visit next weekend in Gainesville. They move it to this weekend, whatever it could be. But right now, this is what the list stands as. You have defensive lineman Jalen Wiggins, who is currently a Florida Gators commit. 4-star there, lives in Tallahassee. I know that this is one where I think a lot of Florida Gators fans, they kind of feel like, hey, this might go back and forth between Florida State. It feels like it's going to be strictly a Florida to Florida State battle. Jalen Wiggins has an official visit scheduled with Florida State right now. I think I want to say they're June 21st. So he'll have an OV this weekend to Gainesville. Next weekend, he won't have anything, if I'm not mistaken. And then he'll have Florida State on the 21st. For the time being, Jalen Wiggins is a Florida Gator. And I know that, again, when he committed, I think a lot of people were like, oh, you know, he's a Tallahassee kid. This commitment came kind of out of the blue. Not really sure how I feel about landing it because those kind of out of the blue commitments tend to be fickle, we'll say. But right now, again, as I record this, I don't think Jalen Wiggins is much of a flight risk. Things can change again, and if Florida State knocks it out of the park with their official visit in a couple weeks, maybe they do something. But right now, I feel pretty good about where Florida stands with Jalen Wiggins. I think Florida feels pretty good about where they stand with Jalen Wiggins, and I don't look at him as a flight risk right now. Then you have edge Jakaleb Falk. He is a 4-star Auburn commit. His brother, Keldrick Falk, also was pursued by Florida. He's currently on Auburn's roster. I think he stays with Auburn, but this is one of those situations where we've talked about it before with players, and we will continue to talk about it, where you're committed to a program like Jakaleb Falk is committed to Auburn, but he has visits in the next 3 weeks with Florida, then Alabama, and then Florida State. Or I'm sorry, I believe Alabama and Florida State might be switched or trying to nail down dates, but got official visits with Florida, Alabama, Florida State, and Auburn. You're currently committed to Auburn, but that's multiple official visits that you're taking with schools that you're not committed to. So this feels kind of like you're committed somewhere, but you're kind of sort of not really. Like you're still feeling out other offers. And so Jakaleb Falk is someone that, again, I think he stays with Auburn, but I'm not convinced that he stays with Auburn, and it wouldn't shock me a ton if he ended up flipping somewhere. But right now, I do think he's Auburn. Then you have 3-star linebacker Miles Johnson on campus as well. Alabama commit right now, and similar to how I just talked about Jakaleb Falk, and I was like, yeah, you're committed, and I think he stays. Again, I think he stays committed, but given that Jakaleb Falk has 3 other official visits, it wouldn't shock me if you flipped. Miles Johnson, on the other hand, he has only an official visit with Florida right now. He's an Alabama commit, but he only has an official visit with Florida right now. And he's said that, hey, Florida's the school pursuing me the hardest right now. And like I said, they're the only school with an official visit scheduled. That includes Alabama. Alabama does not have an OV set yet with Miles Johnson. Obviously, they're probably going to at some point if they're still pursuing him. This could be one of those situations where it's like, hey, they kind of backed off. Like an official visit never happened with the school you're committed to, and then you flipped. It's still a flip, but, context. Things are valued differently. I would think that Alabama is probably going to set their official visit up for maybe later in June, or they wait until the season, and then they pop off there in Tuscaloosa with what could be a really fun season for them. But again, they could also be one of the worst seasons that we've seen from Alabama in a long time. So a little risky if that's their approach. But yeah, Miles Johnson is an Alabama commit, only has Florida as an official visit scheduled at this time. Florida, if you're going to make a move, this could be a good time to do that. In the secondary, then, you got two kids on campus this weekend. Ben Hanks Jr., which Ben Hanks might sound familiar because, well, this is Ben Hanks Jr., and Ben Hanks was a two-time All-SEC linebacker for the Florida Gators before I was born. Just want to throw that one out there. But a four-star corner in Ben Hanks Jr., his son, obviously not playing the same position at all. Right now, I think Miami is pretty heavily in the public lead for this, but Ben Hanks Jr. has said, Florida's closer than people say or than people think right now. And I think that that's partially because of national perception is Florida's not doing great. But Ben Hanks Jr., Florida has that legacy angle. Miami is in the lead right now. A lot of official visits. So I think this is one that's far from over. Again, even if he commits in the summer, you look at the schools pursuing him, or not even the schools pursuing him, the schools that had official visits with him. This past weekend, he was in Louisville. This coming weekend, he's going to be in Gainesville. Then next weekend, he's going to be in Athens to visit the Georgia Bulldogs. Then the weekend after that, he's going to be in Tallahassee to visit the Florida State Seminoles. The weekend after that, he's going to be in Coral Gables to visit the Miami Hurricanes. You see where I'm going with this? There's a lot. There's 5 official visits in the course of 5 weekends, assuming they all stand. I think that even if you go, oh, Miami's in the lead right now. Well, Miami could lose the lead right now. Miami might not be in the lead right now. We don't have a definitive list or ranking or anything like that. But Miami's got a long way to go, but Miami also has a last official visit scheduled. So if he's planning on committing shortly after those OVs, maybe that helps, because let's say he commits a week after the Miami visit. Then at least you've still got Florida, Georgia, Florida State, like kind of fresh in your mind. Miami will obviously be the freshest in your mind. But if you let this go into late summer, then it's like, well, you've gone months at that point, and the most recent OV you've taken is Miami. They're going to be the freshest in your mind, assuming they do a good job there. So we'll see. But yeah, I think Miami's in the lead. Florida is a close second, I think. And then again, anything could happen with Georgia, Florida State there. They could throw a wrench into things. The last commit, or the last recruit on campus, I'm going to say commit a lot, is safety Trey McNutt, 5-star safety. This is one of those times where you go, oh, this is a national recruitment. Okay. You've got Florida right now is probably top 5 for him. He took an official visit to USC last weekend. This official visit just got set up like last week. It was kind of late thrown together. I feel like most of these official visits have been at least set for a few weeks, but Trey McNutt is a very late add to this official visit calendar. I would expect him to add Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, maybe Miami to this as well. He's been, again, national recruitment here. I don't think we're even close to the end of this one. Right now, I think Oregon or Ohio State are in the lead. Ohio State, especially just because Trey McNutt is from Ohio, and it seems like through interviews and everything he's done, he really, really values family. And Ohio State is where his family is. His dad, or where he's from, where he plays. His dad's a coach at Tennessee State, so maybe going somewhere south will actually make it easier if his family moves to Tennessee State or wherever Trey McNutt goes. And then you have that kind of that kind of travel set up where it's like, hey, it's actually shorter travel. Whatever it may be. But I think right now Oregon or Ohio State are in the lead for Trey McNutt. Then, of course, we do have to talk about no more official visits this weekend, but someone did leave the Florida Gators class. To wrap up today's show, we are talking about Josiah Abdullah, one of the earlier Florida Gators commits for this class, for the 2025 class, 3-star that I'm not about to sit here and go, oh, he's a 3-star. Who cares? I'm not putting a spin on it like that. There is a potential spin that we'll talk about in a second, but it's not one that I'm pushing, one that I'm just curious about. But Josiah Abdullah, when he committed, again, 3-star, wasn't super hyped up at all, had a few good camps, but was someone that I thought would be a riser based on his offer list. We had Brian Smith, our recruiting insider here, with Locked On, and we had him on the show after Josiah Abdullah committed, and we were talking about it. You look at this offer list, it's not a 3-star offer list. So it's one of those areas where we go, yeah, I'm going to side with the coaches here and think that that he's better than recruiting services are giving him credit for. I still feel that way. Again, I'm not going to change my my opinion just because someone left the class. I don't do that. I've said that before. When I form an opinion, like I could change the opinion based on an evaluation, but especially as a reactionary thing, I'm not going to change my opinion. Not going to happen. But on 3, I forgot if it was the end of last week or during the weekend, but On 3 reported that there was some uncertainty that Josiah Abdullah would stay in the class for long. That wording is interesting. And also when Josiah Abdullah decommitted from Florida, they reported it as Florida and Josiah Abdullah have parted ways. It's just very interesting phrasing here where I look at it and I go, is it a spin to say, like are they spinning this strictly just verbiage wise to make it seem like it wasn't a decommit? Is it them saying, hey, Florida wasn't really feeling him anymore and let him decommit or told him to decommit or they weren't feeling him, they weren't pushing him, and so he decommitted? I'm just curious. Again, I don't have a spin tactic for here. I don't take spin class. That is not me. I'm not a spinner. I'm just not. So I'm not sure. I'm just curious about that, and I don't have intel to give you about that. I'm sorry. Like I said, I don't try to make my bread and butter by being an insider. I'm here to give you insightful, educated opinions, not insight, and to help you, educate, entertain. The goal. So I don't have inside information on that. I do get inside information on some things. That goes for the insider program most of the time, though. I got nothing insight on Josiah Abdullah. I do know that Florida is looking to sign 4 tight ends or 4 wide receivers in this 2025 cycle. Man, if they sign 4 tight ends, you guys would lose your minds. Just that'd be funny. But now Florida is looking to sign 4 wide receivers in this cycle. I think when you look at who was on campus this past weekend in wide receivers, Nashawn Montgomery and Joshua Moore, I've said before, I think Florida lands Nashawn Montgomery. It's between Florida or Penn State for him. I think that you land at least one of those 2 players that were on campus this past weekend, again, in Nashawn Montgomery and Joshua Moore. I think Nashawn Montgomery is the more likely one, but it could be Joshua Moore if Penn State steps up and you don't land Nashawn Montgomery. Or realistically, it could be both. It could be both. This coming weekend, you've got Caleb Cunningham and Cortez Mills on campus. And again, Caleb Cunningham is someone where every time he visits a program, the push, the narrative coming out is, oh, they might be his new leader. They might be his new leader. So for Florida, maybe you can set yourself as at least his temporary leader. And if you can establish yourself as his leader and one that leaves a lasting impression where he goes through other OVs and is still leaning Florida. Maybe you can make something happen there. I do think they're in pretty decent position with Cortez Mills, again, who will be on campus this weekend. Again, and I think it's going to be Florida or Miami. There's Clemson, Nebraska in there, but I'm not really sold that he's going to pick either of those schools. And then you go the next few weeks, you've got, I think, 6 kids on campus over the next few weeks, 6 receivers on campus over the next couple of weeks. And right now you're, I think, publicly pretty much in the lead for CJ Ingram, who also a legacy player here. We talked about Ben Hanks Jr. CJ Ingram, of course, his dad is Cornelius Ingram, former Florida Gators tight end. So CJ Ingram, you're in the lead for him. And I don't think that's a secret, really. So Florida, there's plenty of names here that you're going to be in the mix for, and we'll probably have one thrown into the mix later in the cycle. But for Florida, Josiah Abdullah, like, losing any player sucks. I'm not going to spin it and go, I don't care. But I am going to say that if you're going to lose a player, should probably be like if you have to lose any commit, you're probably going to say, hey, yeah, take one of my lowest ranked commits that plays a position where we've done a pretty good job of recruiting in recent years and that we want to add 4 kids to anyway. Like, and then we've got a lot of kids coming on campus. If there's any position that you're going to do it, it'd probably be receiver. So if you were going to lose any kid in the class, Josiah Abdullah is probably the choice. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I will see you all next time.